Hi, this is Dee, and you're listening to my podcast, Let Me Clear My Throat. Tonight I'm going to do something totally different than I have done before. Usually I type something up and I citate it and all that other stuff to give proper citation and credit. And sometimes I free mic it, and sometimes it's a variety of both. This one here is going to be kind of like a combination of all that and a little bit more. And the reason being is the subject is, I feel like now more than ever, a very vital thing in everybody's life, actually, because addiction is something that is just not pertaining to drugs and alcohol. Addiction can be actually anything. It could be obviously drugs and alcohol. It could be television. It could be gambling. It could be gaming. It could be your telephone, your cell phone. It could be shopping. It could be like a kleptomaniac. It could be a hypochondriac. It could be a variety of different things, that are something that people use to either self-medicate or become habit-forming. You got, cigarette smoking, smoking of any kind. It's all a part of the same kind of situation, if you will. All forms of coping, all forms of something that somebody does. And some people might not even realize they have an addiction. I know, like with some people say drugs and alcohol are addiction, but yet smoking is a habit. Which I've discussed before in one of my other podcasts. There's about 6,000 different types of carcinogenics in a cigarette, and many of them are similar to some of the drugs that are out on the streets, and actually some are even worse than the drugs on the streets. So, but yet they call it a habit. But drugs and alcohol and other things are addiction. So there's kind of some contradiction there, I think, in some of it, in my opinion. But anyway, what I'm getting to is this particular podcast is going to be broken up into probably a few, because I have printed out 100 pages of an ebook. And this ebook is called the Sobriety ebook. It's easier for me to say. The Sobriety ebook, Your Guide to a Better Life. It was by Chris Elkins. He's a MA, and it is from drugsrehab.com. So if you have not been to this site, they have a lot of information on there. And if, feel free to bring up the screen and go through it with me. Obviously, I'm going to read this. It's a workbook, but it's also got a lot of vital information in it. And what I want to do is basically go through the whole workbook. Obviously, I know I will not be able to touch base on that in one setting, so I'm going to have as many as it takes actually to get through this. So if you're fighting addiction or know somebody that is of any kind, and you want to follow along with this, feel free to do so. I encourage that. You can also get out a notebook, take notes, if people still have those, or some way to be able to copy some stuff, or you can bring up this website yourself. And if you know how to copy and paste it into a Word document or whatever, you can go through and actually, save it, maybe download it and enter your answers into the workbook yourself, or even write it down, take notes and go through and answer it. Or as I read it, if you want to, you can write the question down and answer however you want to do it and however it works for you. But what I wanted to do is go through this basically page by page, verbatim, pretty much. Obviously, there might be a few pages I might skip. Nothing that is like vital, just maybe like different, I don't know, we'll play it by ear. But like I said, I won't be able to get through this in one setting, so there'll obviously be other parts to this as well. So I do hope that you follow along and that you do partake in each of the sessions that I'm going to go through this. I'm not for sure on how far I'm going to get in it, because if you follow my other podcasts, you also know that I also give side, opinions as well. So to start off, again, it's the Sobriety ebook. Sobriety, and it's ebook, Your Guide to a Better Life, again by Chris Elkins, on drugrehab.com. So first I'm going to read this welcome letter that Dr. Timothy Huckabee actually wrote into this. And it says, "Welcome. Hello. I'm Dr. Timothy Huckabee, a board-certified addiction specialist who is in recovery from opiate addiction and alcoholism. I was in denial when I began my recovery journey in medical school. I kicked an opiate addiction for 10 years, but I remained ignorant toward the problems alcohol was causing me. In 2008, I relapsed for 6 months before a few partners and friends of mine convinced me to seek treatment. I had hit rock bottom, and I was finally ready to listen at age 52. I achieved sobriety from painkillers and alcohol. You don't have to wait until you hit rock bottom to ask for help. You don't have to wait for friends and family to intervene before you take proactive steps towards living a healthy life. If alcohol or other drugs are causing problems in your life, no matter how big or small, consider a life of sobriety. If you have tried to quit using alcohol or other drugs and were unable to stop, now is the time to ask for help. By opening this ebook, you've taken one of the first few steps. I'm sorry, let me redo that. By opening this ebook, you've taken one of the first steps towards a life in recovery. You decided you want to learn more about maintaining sobriety, and you will not let alcohol or other drugs control your life. Congratulations on taking that step. Maintaining sobriety won't always be easy. It will require work. It will require time. It will require effort. But most of all, it will require hope. Sometimes you'll be able to do it on your own. Other times you'll need help. My advice to you, ask for help. Turn to friends and family for support when you need it. Attend support group meetings. If you need treatment, make time for it. Learn from mistakes, keep your head up, and never quit trying. Wishing you well on your journey, Dr. Timothy Huckabee. Hats off to him. I applaud him for not only taking, getting sober and everything, but also sharing his story. Because I know there are some people out there that go through and try to maintain recovery from addiction or whatever they're going through. And some people actually have this battle and they battle it silently. They're basically not a whole bunch of people, I guess you could say, know or understand their addiction. And so they try to get sober or maintain sobriety basically on their own. And without the help of outside help or anything. And sometimes they're not really in denial. They're just in the mode of, I guess they figure they got addicted quietly and they'll get sober quietly. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Just as if you're an outspoken addict or suffering from some type of addiction, just because you're outspoken on it and speak up on it and you have, I guess, public sobriety, doesn't mean that always works also. So a lot of it just really depends on, well, in the end of it, actually, you. And I say that with respect, because I'm not here to point fingers at anybody. I'm not here to shine a spotlight on you. I'm not here to put anybody down or judge anybody whatsoever. Everybody has some form of coping in some way. Somebody has some type of self-medication of some way. Some choose drug and alcohol. Some have different choices. Doesn't mean addiction is not addiction. So just with that in mind, if this book is going to basically talk about drugs and alcohol. However, I personally want to put in there that this can actually pertain to any type of addiction. So with that in mind, please keep an open mind. And if you are serious about trying to put your life together and sobriety, then I hope that you join along with me and get some type of benefit out of this book. And like I said, feel free to go on drugrehab.com, pull this up, and, take the time to go through it on your own, because it's got a lot of great information on here, but also too, it also has a lot of references and resources as well. So there's a lot of information and a lot of help that can possibly be able to help you where you need to, because everybody's way of sobriety is not always the same. And whatever works for one person might not be what the other person is going to benefit from. So just keep that in mind. And if you have relapsed, or, maybe recovered from one sort of, drug of choice and got addicted to a different drug of choice, don't give up on yourself. But also note too, don't be hard on yourself. But also too, not all addiction is unhealthy. So, and I say that with much respect, because not all addiction is unhealthy. Because there's nothing wrong with being addicted to taking care of yourself. There's nothing wrong with being addicted for caring about yourself. There's nothing wrong with being addicted for being positive to yourself. There's nothing wrong with being addicted to good things in your life. And what people may see that as good, it might not always reflect what everybody else sees as good. So everybody has their own opinion. And anything that is not natural in your body, that your body makes, is foreign. It's a foreign object. So it's up to you to decide on what foreign object you want your body to naturally convince itself to be a participant in, basically, if that makes sense. So anyway, the book is Sobriety ebook, Your Guide to a Better Life. This was on April 2017 by drugrehab.com. And it says how to use this ebook. This ebook was designed for anyone who wishes to abstain from alcohol or other drugs. It's written to help you improve your health, happiness, and well-being. You don't have to have a clinically diagnosed substance use disorder to use this ebook. It can help you even if you've never experienced symptoms of addiction or problems related to drugs or alcohol or drug abuse. Sorry, I'm not a very good reader out loud. I think anyway, but I'm trying. Excuse me, that was very loud. Although this ebook was written for individuals in recovery from addiction or dependence, the information worksheets and questionnaires can benefit anyone striving to live a life of sobriety. Likewise, friends, family members, and caregivers of people in recovery can use this ebook to better understand the challenges of sobriety. They can develop goals for supporting their loved ones, learn how to provide a safe environment, and help their loved ones to stay sober. This ebook does not provide a quick fix or magical cure for addiction. It does not offer a simple solution in life's problems because maintaining sobriety isn't easy. To get the most out of this ebook, you'll need to think about the words you read, determine how the information applies to you, and create strategies for implementing the tips and techniques in your daily life. To be successful, you don't need to read the entire ebook in one sitting. Phew, that's a relief, because I'll tell you, I'd be like... Anyway, you don't have to read it in one sitting. Read 1 or 2 sections a day if you need to, basically. Take time to think about the information and use it in your everyday life. Fill out the questionnaires and analyze the results. Think about what the results mean to you. As you read, record your thoughts in the space provided. Or like I was saying earlier, take notes and write down your questions or write down answers to the questions as you read. However it works for you. Everybody's got learning strategies that are different. So whatever works for you. And obviously this is recorded, so you can always go back and listen to my lovely voice again and go, from there and there. So anyway, be honest when you answer the questionnaires. Be realistic when you develop goals. Take your time. Stay positive and never give up. Maintaining sobriety is a lifelong endeavor. When you've completed this ebook, your journey won't be over. This may only be the beginning, but you'll be more prepared for recovery and better equipped to live a life of sobriety. I'm trying to put these back in order, and I've got them scattered, and I've only just started. Quick tips for sobriety. Recovery isn't a quick process. There aren't any shortcuts to sobriety. It requires work, determination, and faith. However, there are basic guidelines you can follow to decrease the odds of relapse and make recovery easier. Now, I'm going to say this real quick before I get into this. I know of many people that have gotten sober and have relapsed. And they've gotten sober and they've relapsed. And they've gotten sober and they relapsed. And so on and so on. Don't look at it as failure. Look at it as learning. You're learning what your coping mechanisms are. You're learning to teach yourself how to readjust yourself to learn from what you need to learn from. So basically, whenever you relapse and you get sober again, during the time that you're sober, try to understand your reasoning of what helps you to cope and what decisions you made to want to get sober and how it felt to you once you got back on track before you relapsed. But don't look at it as failure or going backwards in your life. Look at it as you sat down to rethink your strategy of, okay, what I just did didn't work all the way. So what can I do different to adjust myself or adjust my healing and coping mechanisms of my recovery to see what you can do to help you in a different manner? Because, like I said before, what some people do in one way is not going to work for somebody else. And I always say the best teachers are students, and the best students are teachers. Because we always have a lot to learn, even if we think we're you could be a teacher and think that and no disrespect to teachers, a teacher could be anybody that is teaching someone something. And while you may be fluent in the subject that you're teaching, doesn't mean you're knowledgeable of every aspect of that subject. And sometimes a student can come in, per se, and have a different outlook, opinion, or suggestion, or train of thought that maybe the teacher might not have been experienced or exposed to before, that teaches them something from the student. And sometimes vice versa, because sometimes a student then learns by teaching. Because sometimes when we are researching something to teach, we are actually teaching ourselves something as well. And sometimes it's also noticing the different types of ways that people learn things and different ways that they intercept the perception of what they're learning. And just because one person learns something a certain way does not mean that another person will learn it the same way. So even if the situation of the healing, if you will, is taught the same way, one person will not intervene it the same as the other, because their learning mechanisms and their learning strategies and their way of thoughts and their environment and everything else comes into play, and they will not intercept it the same way. So they might not benefit as much as the other person, or vice versa. And there's a lot of factors to go in there and think about. But also, too, when you are in a way of an addiction, of some people, lifelong addiction of trying to cope. And sometimes they find that one addiction doesn't work, so then they try another one on top of it. And pretty soon they got multiple addictions. And they're just trying to not feel the pain, trying to heal, whatever their motive is. And sometimes eventually it just becomes a way of their life. And then that's just what they know. And it's not because they don't want to know something different. It's because this is just what they've got used to. This is their custom of what they become accustomed to. This is their environment. It could be a variety of different reasons. And then we have people that, families and friends that are going through the other side of it, that come into play. And I'm not going to touch on that tonight any more than what I need to, because that's a very sensitive subject in itself too. More or less tonight, I want to focus on recovery, addiction, goals, everything that this ebook has to offer, and whatever else in my thoughts and experiences from my environment and people I know and whatnot can do to intervene to try to help. Not to say, hey, you need to get sober, you need to straighten up, you need to get your act together, get your head out of your ass. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to say you're worth more than what you feel. You are not the things that reflection in the mirror that everybody has displayed of you, that you've got so accustomed to keep feeding into and look at, and even create some of your own demons in your reflection. You are not everything that they have made you feel that has hurt you. And whatever reason you are self-medicating, or whatever your reason is, there's a root to the reasoning of what? Of why you feel the way you feel, even if you don't know what it is. But dwelling on the fact of you relapsed, or you failed, or you're this, that, and the other, that is not going to get you anywhere. That's not going to get you anywhere positive. That's not going to get you anywhere of recovery. And I say recovery, I like to call it healing. It's not going to help you heal. It's not a matter of being in recovery. It's not a matter of, falling off the bandwagon or whatever they say. It's a matter of you. It's a matter of how you feel, what you're going through, where your mind is at, how much whatever you've been going through has affected you mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationship-wise. I mean, the whole 9 yards. But also, too, it's a matter of finding ways to cope that are positive, finding ways to forgive yourself and be honest with yourself, but also trying to find ways to heal. Just to heal. So that way you can actually be a part of your life and just not going through the motions of being alive. And with that, I'm going to continue on with this ebook. But I just want to say that because I know so many people that suffer in so many ways. And my heart and my prayers go out to each and every one of you. And if I can make a difference in just one person's life with these podcasts, that is my work. I smile and I am accomplished at that. Even if these podcasts that I do just help me. Because there's a lot of misconception in so many ways, so many people's opinions, and I'm not trying to belittle anything that anybody's going through, whether it's on one side or the other side. My point being is we all need to be able to try to find ways to heal. We've all got something going on we need to heal from. But more people, unfortunately, have more deadlier situations of healing that need major changes for. Because sometimes, eventually, that Band-Aid that people try to put on them, it's going to fall off. And some things cannot be covered in a Band-Aid. And unfortunately, this world has gone to so many different levels of scary, especially where drugs and stuff are concerned, that they have some drugs out there now that are not even, Narcan it doesn't even phase them. It doesn't even phase it. And they are deadlier and more available out there than what people realize. And they're getting into situations that are far more dangerous than just putting it in a pill or a powder or whatever. There are so many different things that are going on in this world. And it's a scary, scary feeling. But also, too, knowing that, let me rephrase that, believing that you are worth more than that one-time high or that one-time whatever. That's where the real thing is. Because it's not so much as the addiction, sometimes it's a matter of the motion. And there's a lot of trigger points. Sometimes it's a matter of your surrounding. It's a matter of, it's not so much as, hey, because eventually you get, I guess it depends on what it is, but sometimes it's just going through the motions of hey, let's light this up, and I'm not saying that's to everybody, because like I said, everybody's got their own thing, but sometimes it's a matter of just the motion of the substance. It's not necessarily the substance, because people, sometimes they're like, I sit here and I do this and I do this and I don't get nothing off of it. Well, then why are you still doing it? You don't even know what's going in your body and you're taking that chance on it. Why are you doing it if you're not getting anything out of it? It's not necessarily the product. It's the motion of the addiction that you're accustomed to. You're addicted to the motion. And I'm not saying that's for everybody, but it's also something to think about. So anyway, we're gonna go on here. It says, be open and honest. One of the most difficult parts of maintaining sobriety is admitting that you need help. But support from others is vital to maintaining sobriety. If you're reading this ebook, you've taken the first step toward recognizing that you need to learn new ways to live a healthy life. Continue to be open to new information. Be honest with yourself and those who tried to help you. Allow others to teach you about what worked for them. Many people in recovery live by spiritual principles that strengthen their... Many people in recovery live by spiritual principles that strengthen their resolve and recovery. And it is often described as a spiritual journey. Regardless of your religious beliefs, be open to finding a new purpose in your life when you find sobriety. Make a plan. Most people who regularly use alcohol or other drugs develop cravings. They may experience several withdrawal symptoms when they try to stop. Abstaining becomes very difficult, and using seems easy. You need to make a sobriety plan to overcome the challenges of recovery. It says, trying to get my fingers to work here to turn the page. The plan should include steps for creating a support system, setting goals, living in a safe environment, avoid triggers, coping with stress, and avoiding relapse. This ebook will help you to develop that plan. I guess I should have gave a disclaimer at the beginning saying, I get tongue-tied when I read. So anyway, that's my disclaimer now. Create short-term goals. Thinking of long-term sobriety can be intimidating. Achieving a life without substance of abuse is like climbing a high mountain. Climbing a mountain takes preparation, time, hard work, and commitment, and it starts with a single step. Approach every one step at a time. Develop short-term goals that brings you closer to sobriety. Let me start that sentence over. Develop short-term goals that bring you closer to lifelong sobriety. Goals give you something to work towards, help you measure, progress, and provide a sense of accomplishment. Transition at your own pace. You can't rush recovery. It takes time. If you're attending formal treatment, work with your therapist or physician to transition through the levels of care at a pace that are comfortable for you. Now, all these words are not probably going to be verbatim as they're written, because sometimes I mess up on them and I'm going with it. But so, whoever wrote this book, let me get that back. Chris Elkins, I apologize if I add a couple words or so in this. Your information is very, very educational. Where was I? Okay. If you're in a 12-step program, work the steps at your own pace. Most importantly, stay in a safe environment until you're confident that you're ready for the challenges of everyday life. If you've recently completed treatment, consider staying in a sober living house before moving home. If you took a break from work to recover, make sure you're ready for the stresses of work week before going back. If you aren't ready to rebuild damaged relationships, wait until you have the energy and time to reconnect. Also, too, I know they say that sometimes when you try to get sober, you have to change your friends, so maybe sometimes your family, your environment, your relationships, and whatnot. I agree with that to a certain extent, because my view on that is a positive environment can come from positive role models. And people get in circles and get addicted. And people are in circles to get high. People are in circles to get drunk. People are in circles to self-medicate in whatever way they're doing. So why can't they take that same circle and put what was negative and hurting them and redirect it into something of a group that's more positive, more reinforcing? Why can't they take the same group and make it a recovery group? Or friends are out, let's say hypothetically, friends are out getting high, getting drunk, doing whatever. And maybe most of you are relapsed. Most of you want to get sober. Most of you maybe not even consider it at all, but maybe majorly need to, for whatever reason. Why can't you turn that in then and form a support group within yourselves and be supportive of each other? Find things to do that are positive. Do outings. Take your money that you normally would spend on drugs, put them in like a container all together, if you will, and go take that money and go do something at an outing. Do something fun. There's all kinds of fun things out there to do. And maybe that would help to positively reinforce you to be able to do and look at things differently. There's go skating. And don't laugh at me. I'll tell you, people in my generation, we used to burn that skating rink up. I don't care. I'm one of them. Go skating, go to the movies, go hiking, go camping, go fishing, go boating, go to the gun range, they got axe throwing. Who'd have thunk? I would like to do that. Go axe throwing, go to the amusement park, go bowling, go putt-putt, go play golf, whatever the case may be. Or also, too, you can be a mentor. Go volunteer at some shelters. Go volunteer giving out to the community. Whatever the case may be public speakers on trying to talk to schools and stuff in the younger generation, or even at regular support groups. Maybe all of you can get together and go to a support group together, or actually have one in your home or wherever you're at usually, and all of you guys get together and talk and get it all out and try to be supportive of yourself and make a difference there. Take your money, instead of spending it on drugs and alcohol or whatever the case may be, order some pizza in, get some sodas, pop you in a movie, pop some popcorn, whatever, have a movie night. Or just sit around and talk and actually get to know one another in different ways. And don't be codependent on being codependent, if that makes sense. Just my thought. Because also too, I would rather want to do something like that than to lose my friends, my loved ones, my family. And just because, say, I would remove myself from the group to get sober or whatever, I don't want to leave them behind to be in that same environment that I'm trying to get out of. Why wouldn't I want them to be getting sober and better too? Why wouldn't I want to try to make a difference with them, and we could get sober together? We could beat whatever our addiction is, and we don't even necessarily have the same addiction. Whatever the case may be supportive of one another. Be each other's, not necessarily a sponsor, but people's support, somebody to lean on, somebody to talk them through something. And people might say, well, I'm not strong enough for that. Maybe not. Maybe not at that moment. Maybe not at that day. But you might be the next go round. And if there's enough of you in this group, somebody can be in that group that would have your back, so to speak, and be able to talk you through the moment. And then those moments eventually get to be into bigger moments, longer moments, and then eventually days and weeks and months and so on and so on. And pretty soon those moments that used to take your life away is now helping you to discover that you don't have enough time for that because you got too much much living to do. You got too much other positive stuff of life to do. And if you can have an adrenaline rush on whatever drug you're doing or whatever the case may be, with all due respect, take that adrenaline rush on something that's positive. Go go-kart riding or, whatever, or bungee jump or whatever, zip lining, whatever the case may be. Everybody get together, put their money in a thing, and after maybe a few months or whatever, have enough saved up and go on vacation together. Go skiing, go, to different places and go on a vacation or whatever the case may be. Everybody get together and pitch in and do something, together as, and I'm going to say this with due respect, as a family. Because those that are in addiction, it's a different type of family. My belief. Because it's people that are there and witness the most darkest hours and times of your life are the very same ones that are in that same shadow as you, but just in a different spot, if that makes sense. But why shouldn't you guys all be each other's light and all each other's motivation and each other's words of encouragement and, or whatever the case may be? Take whatever is negative and try to make it into a positive. If you're going to have an addiction, be addicted to life. I mean, they're going to call you an addict anyway. Be addicted to life instead of making life, taking your life away, I guess. Anyway, just my thoughts and opinion. And all due respect, I mean no disrespect to anybody. It's just because I know addiction, I've seen so many people suffer from it. And it is easier said than done. But with the right support, the right environment, the right family, the right outlook, the right positive, intervention of each other. It's not where you would be being judgmental on one another. You would be more understanding because you understand that level. And what better way of helping and teaching somebody and learning from each other than one that is in that same level or around that, I hope that makes sense. I'm probably getting all twisted here. Anyway, we're going to continue on with this ebook. Don't go it alone. Battling a substance use disorder is a lonely fight. Many people don't understand addiction, so they don't know how to react when they encounter it. But there are many resources available for individuals in recovery. There are people in your community waiting to help you. Turn to friends and family you love and trust for support. Find a sponsor, a mentor, or a peer at a support group meeting to turn to when times get tough. Call an addiction therapist. If you don't know where to go, ask your primary care physician. Call one of the hotlines that are on page 92, which they have a list here on page 92. We will go over it later. Or search drugrehab.com for information on local resources. Sometimes it's just easier to have all your friends together. I guess I would rather have all of my friends and people that are in this. Okay, so hypothetically, let's say we're going to go get, effed up this weekend and we're all just going to spend the weekend getting high, get drunk, and whatever, doing our addiction thing. I would rather take that weekend to turn that around to something positive with those same people than to be going and trying to find clothes or pictures or memories to get ready for their funeral. Or them have to do that for me. So I would rather take my friends and the people that I'm partying with, per se, and try to do an outing of fun and memory making that is smiles and positive selfies and whatnot, than reminiscing about, this, that, and the other with my buddy, or, having to relive over and over again, whatever the case may be. Because either you or they or multiple people in your group, unfortunately, are not there with you anymore. And maybe if you can redirect that in a different manner, that might be a little bit more motivation of, but then again, when you're in addiction too, your train of thought is not always where everybody, I guess, thinks it should be. Because depending on your sort of addiction or the level of whatever you're doing, I even say this with depression and anxiety and stuff. When you're in a state of mind that is not your natural, I guess, if you want to say respectfully, whatever that would really be, and a more, I guess, when you're not yourself, and you're self-medicated, and you're not in the right frame of mind, per se, of thinking clearly and making rational, positive decisions, it's easier said than done at that moment of what you coulda, shoulda, woulda, but didn't do. It's the times that you're in the frame of mind that you can think more clearly, that's the best time to pre-plan, if you will, on a plan of action for the times that you're not. And hopefully, whether you or whomever that you're partying with or are comfortable to talk with about certain things that you're going through, maybe then you would be able to put that positive plan into action, and it might just be what saves your life or someone that you love, whether it be a family friend or an addiction friend. And I don't want to say addiction friend because that sounds so, that's just rude. So I'm going to retract that statement, because I know for a fact that some of my friends in my life are more family to me than my own family, of some of my own family. So, and I say that because it's true. I have many people in my life, and some are more of a family to me, and they don't have a drop of my DNA in theirs. So I do know that friends are very vital in people's lives. So I definitely don't want to downgrade it by labeling, because that's a big problem, I think, in this world is we like to label too much instead of realizing that people are human beings, and we're not any less than human. It says, stay positive. Addiction is a biological disease. Alcohol and other drugs cause physical cravings and withdrawal symptoms. If you have a severe substance use disorder, formal treatment is the only way to overcome the physical side effects. But overcoming physical difficulties is only the first part of the battle. Now, addiction is a biological disease. I guess, I don't know, I'm kind of controversial on that. I understand what they're saying there, but I always my opinion, and I am no means a doctor or specialist of whatever, but I always believed that sometimes when you treat the addiction, and I use quotations, you're treating the addiction of the substance. So you're treating the substance, not necessarily the motion of the substance or the root of the reason of why the substance became into play to begin with. So you can recover from the substance, but are you going to go get a different one? You can recover from the substance, but then what do you do with the reasoning behind it? What do you do with your feelings? What do you do with the root of your pain? What do you do with yourself on coping in a positive way, and also healing from the motion of doing the substance? Because you're going to have all kinds of triggers. If you're a smoker, were you smoking in the bathroom at gas stations? Were you smoking in the department stores? Were you smoking in parking lots? Were you smoking at gas stations out in the parking lot? Were you smoking in people's bathrooms, your friends, your family? Were you taking a shower or a bath and in there doing whatever? If you're intravenous and you're, shooting up, is it going getting your blood drawn? Is that triggering you? Is it, there's all kinds of different, I don't need to list them all, but there's different triggers. And that's a part of healing too. So if you get treatment for your substance abuse per se, are you also getting treatment for your triggers? Are you getting treatment for your symptoms? Are you getting treatment for the root of your pain? Are you getting treatment to know where to put your pain and your feelings in a positive manner? Are you having treatment and healing from being honest with yourself and believing in yourself and knowing what to do with yourself now that you're going to get treatment from and healing from your substance? I mean, there's a lot of, and that alone can make you go, you know what, I'm just going to go have a beer, because that's a lot easier than having to do this. And maybe that's true to a point, no pun intended, but what is the after effect going to have on you? Is that going to be the outcome of that drink? Might seem easier than getting sober, but after you have that drink or whatever it is that you're doing for self-medication, the effects of it afterwards, is that going to be easier than, say, if you would have done, some type of intervention before you took the drink or your coping mechanism or whatever the case may be? None of it is going to be easy. None of it is going to be, none of it is going to be resolved overnight. None of it is going to be resolved in one sitting of an ebook. And I know people that count their sobriety days, and I respect that, and I applaud each and every one of you. But also too, my thought and opinion is, and I say this with respect because I don't want to downplay at all people that count their sobriety dates and times, and I applaud you, and please do not take offense to this at all. Don't get addicted to knowing your numbers. The only number you need to know, in my opinion, and to believe in and to feel, is 1. 1 is better than none. 1 is one more closer to another one, and so on and so on and so on. And what if you forget what number you're on? And people say, well, I've got a counter. Okay, I understand, but, and by no means am I downplaying that at all. But I'm just saying, one moment, not necessarily even one day, one moment, I applaud you. One time, one moment of saying, no thank you, I'll pass. I applaud you. Because even that one moment just made a difference on your train of thought and where you're at and where you don't want to be at. But instead of beating yourself up over it, pat yourself on the back. Take a deep breath and say, you know what? That felt good. That felt good to do. I'm proud of myself. And then take your next moment as it comes. And just try to find ways to be honest with yourself and to know that you're worth every single those one moments. Every single one of those one moments that you pass on is another moment that you have a chance at having a chance. If that makes any sense. Sometimes I know I talk in circles. In my head it makes sense, and other times, well, I hope it makes sense to you. Because what makes sense to me might not make sense to everybody else. But I try to explain it in the best way that I feel like I can. But then again, I don't want to make people feel like I have all the answers. Because I don't. And I know I don't. But I also know that sometimes it takes one moment, one person, one breath to not pass up an honored opportunity. To be that one person for that one moment and that one breath for someone else. And that is a big deal. It says recovery is a psychological journey. Positivity, commitment, and hope increase the chance of sustained sobriety. It can be challenging to maintain a positive attitude, but it's more challenging to achieve your goals with negative attitude. When times get tough, count your blessings. Reflect on the progress you've made and keep your eyes set on the happiness you can achieve. Says addiction is categorized by the following: inability to consistently abstain, impairment in behavioral control, cravings, diminished recognition of life problems, and dysfunctional emotional response. Understanding addiction. Recovering from addiction begins with understanding the disease. The medical diagnosis for addiction is substance use disorder. Substance use disorders are categorized as mild, moderate, and severe based on the severity and quantity of a person's symptoms. Now, again, I know that I say this is mainly talking about drugs and alcohol, but addiction is anything that is self-medicating, that brings some type of, and this is my definition, some type of self-medication to you, whether it be drugs, alcohol, or whatever. Drugs and alcohol are not the only forms of addiction in this world. Addiction causes physical changes in the brain. The changes make the brain crave addictive substance to feel pleasure and go into withdrawal when it doesn't receive them. It's kind of like in psychology class when you got the dog and the bell and the food. And I don't know if you've taken that. It's conditioning, basically. And they'd ring the bell and the dog would come get the food, and eventually the bell would ring and there'd be no food there, and the dog would be like have saliva out waiting for the food, and it wouldn't be there because he knew when the bell rang or whatever it was. Hopefully I'm remembering this right. He was being conditioned. And sometimes when you do different things in life and you do it repetitively, you're conditioning yourself whether you realize it or not. And it's not necessarily you per se, it's whatever you're using or is, I guess, being conditioned on you. And sometimes society, I believe, is very, very guilty in so many forms of conditioning to everybody else in this world. And society has people believing things based off of their own opinion as what is society fit, if you will, society acceptable, society bound, society opinion, blah, 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 blah. Society of this world needs to think about their own self and stop being so society. Because that is what's wrong with this world, in my opinion. We are so apt to try to have a base based off of what everybody else tells us to base it off of, that it actually affects us in negative ways and causes us more harm. And I'm not saying with everything, but a lot of people's self-esteem, a lot of their self-esteem issues is society's fault. Shame on you. Just because I'm not a size -0 or a -12 doesn't mean that I'm obese. Doesn't mean that I'm fat. Doesn't mean I'm ugly. Doesn't mean that I cannot wear a crop top. Doesn't mean that I should not be able to dance. Doesn't mean that I, whatever. Go to the beach in a two-piece. Who are you to tell me what my self-reflection and my self-esteem is supposed to look like based off of your perception, and you don't even know me? And you think that don't have effect on somebody's mental state of mind? And I'm just using that as an example. And I'm not saying society is to blame for everything, but 99% of it, step on up. Because you're the front one in line, in my opinion. But it does something to people's mentality. And we are all in this together. And I say this because society is usually the first ones to be judgmental and condescending on people and finger pointing and talking about and condemning and whatever the case may be, without even wanting to acknowledge that that's a human being on the other side of that finger they're pointing at. And one incident, one moment, one tragedy, one something could be you in that exact same person's scenario situation. And don't say, because I'm going to tell you what, because you don't know. You have no clue. Why? Because you have been blessed enough not to be there at that level. And I'm not trying to say, oh, glory to thou, no disrespect, God, of, hey, let's, everybody needs to be an addict of something. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that society needs to be more understanding and less judgmental. And less finger pointing and more hugging without touching. Because most people don't like to, I don't like to be hugged. Unless it's by certain people. But anyway, nor here nor there. Put your arms out and offer help and understanding, or a shoulder to cry on, or something besides judgment and condescending words and judgmental things of putting people down and making people think that they need to be a certain reflection of whatever you think you need to see in this world, when you don't even take the time to go see your own reflection of how you are actually being. I mean, who pissed in your Rice Krispies? Who sat here and gave you the head of the table to be so judgmental on people you don't even know in this world? Maybe you're being addicted to being opinionated. I don't know. Just my thought. Anyway. Let's see. Where was I at? The disease is chronic or long-lasting. It often involves phases of remission, when someone is able to maintain sobriety for periods of time, and relapse when he or she returns to compulsive alcohol or drug-seeking behavior. Without treatment or participation in a recovery program, addiction causes numerous life problems and can result in premature death. I would also like to say this, and I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but I do want to say this. Anybody who is on the other side of addiction, please, by no means, I pray that you do not think that this is a reflection on all the things that you have endured in your life due to somebody being in addiction. Because I know people are in dangerous situations. They try to help people. They open their doors. They're robbed. Their things are stolen. They're abused. They're taken advantage of. They're neglected. Some are even violated. However the case may be, please by no means take this podcast of what I'm doing here as a reflection of anything that's insensitive to what you've been going through in your feelings. If I'm wording that correctly. Because although I talk a lot, doesn't mean I always have the right things to say. And nor do I always put them in the correct manner. Although I try, that doesn't mean that that's the way it's perceived. Right now, I'm trying to basically help people that need to be helped. And if I can make a difference on this ebook for sobriety and making a difference with someone, I hope that that's a positive reflection of hope, if you will, in your direction for your loved one or whoever you have been going through stuff with. So I'm on your side, but I'm also on the side that doesn't need to feel like they need to take a side. Because with all due respect, I'm going to make the assumption that you would not go through as much pain and heartache that you do if you did not love and care about the person that you've been trying to save, and you just feel like they are dying in front of your eyes and you are helpless. And no matter how hard you try, you just don't understand what you're doing wrong and why you can't save them, or why they're not doing what they need to do, or why, whatever the case may be, whatever it is, emotions you're feeling. Please note, if at all possible, it's not your fault. And I'm going to say that respectfully. And if you are listening and you are on the other side of addiction, I do pray that you find some way to heal yourself as well, because it does affect you that deeply. And it does take a toll on you in so many ways that it's very hard for you to heal from. And you suffer from a lot of traumatic triggers yourself based off of trying to save someone else. And not that you're doing anything wrong, but also remember to save yourself too. Because you're not going to be any good to anybody in this world if you give up on yourself. And maybe you say, oh, I'm not doing that. And maybe that's the case. Every case is different. But I'm just saying, I have learned in my life that I have been there for so many people in my life, trying to hold them up and save the day and make their life easier and trying to help them and do this, that, and the other, that I was losing myself. And I was fading. I was dying. I was not taking care of myself. And it was going to be the death of me because I couldn't take it anymore. And I did blame myself for myself. And I don't know if you've listened to my other podcasts, but I am on a journey to learn my new reflection. Because my reflection is going to be the face that I put in that mirror. And I pray wholeheartedly that I can remember to remind her not to keep looking over her shoulder of who's basically photobombing, if you will, but concentrate on the person or the reflection that's actually in that mirror. Me. And I matter. My reflection matters. All the weird faces I make at myself matter. All the voice impersonations and stuff that I do matters. All the off-key notes of singing that I do, and the opera and the goofiness and whatever matters. My weird-looking clothes that I might mismatch and not care, and that's because I'm at home and I'm not going anywhere. It all matters. Every breath I take. If I want to blow on the mirror and put a smiley face in the mist of my steam of my what's it called? my hair. Can't fucking think of, excuse me. I can't think of what it's called. The condensation of my breath. There we go. And then draw a smiley face in it. That matters. Because I know I've come a long way. I was addicted to hurting myself in more ways than people will ever know, and honestly ever understand. And I say that with all due respect because I have a hard time understanding it myself. And that's why I'm on this journey of healing. So back to the ebook. I just wanted to say that, though, because I'm not trying to be insensitive to anybody that's on either end, or any end for that matter, of any type of pain, sorrow, addiction, recovery, healing, anything. Addiction, depression, anxiety, PTSD, the list goes on and on. It's not a matter of being a label. It's a matter of reminding each other that we're people. We're human beings. And we deserve to be in this world just as much as anybody else. Even if society has their pinky up having a cup of tea at noon or whatever, no offense to anybody that does that, stereotyping. It says the American Society of Addiction Medicine defines addiction as the following: a primary chronic disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. I don't know where I said circuitry. Circuitry. My circuitry is not going the way it's supposed to in my brain right now. Dysfunctional in these circuits leads to characteristic biological, psychological, social, and spiritual manifestations. This is reflected in an individual pathologically, pursuing reward and or relief by substance use or other behaviors. So basically, it's negative reinforcement instead of positive reinforcement. I don't know if I'm going to say this word right. ASAM, I think. ASAM defines recovery as the following: a process of sustained action that addresses the biological, psychological, social, spiritual disturbances inherent in addiction. Recovery aims to improve the quality of life by seeking balance and healing in all aspects of health and wellness, while addressing an individual's constant pursuit of absence, impairment in behavioral control, dealing with cravings, recognizing problems in one's behaviors and interpersonal relationships, and dealing more effectively with emotional responses. That's a mouthful. Okay. We are like 1 hour and 10 minutes in this. And I am on page 14. That's okay, though. It's okay because we don't need to rush. And I say that because just because we have 100 pages respectfully in this doesn't mean we need to rush to say, okay, I read this ebook and I've done this, that, and the other, so voila. No. Because just because I read it and we go over it and you might be following along, you might be writing down your answers or whatever, doesn't mean that you can't go back and retain it differently, reread it differently, because the way I'm reading it to you is not the way you need to retain it, if that makes sense. Maybe it's not coming over the way that I'm reading it. Sometimes, in my opinion, when you go back over something, especially something as important as this, and you reread it, you actually sometimes pick up on things that you might have missed before, but also, too, you might interpret it in a different manner. Because depending on what your frame of mind is, what your surroundings are, and what your motivation is at the moment, might be different from what the moment was before. Just my opinion. So, and there's nothing wrong with going through it multiple times. Pop your headphones in and, whatever, and however you need to do it. And it doesn't need to be broadcast loud for everybody to know what you're battling. Because sometimes having the pressure of being pressured is pressure. And maybe that's laughable at some people, but if you know, you know. And that doesn't always help. I think sometimes it can actually make things worse. But it says recovery. Recovery is a lifelong process of abstaining from substance of abuse, maintaining health, and finding purpose in life. The word means something different to everyone, and each person's path depends on what they hope to achieve during recovery. Some people say they've recovered from addiction. They no longer experience cravings, can cope with triggers, and can withstand traumatic experiences without using alcohol or other drugs. Others believe they'll always be in recovery from addiction. They attend support groups, meetings, or continue medication-assisted treatments for the rest of their lives. Recovery is also often a spiritual journey in which people find a new purpose in life that doesn't involve alcohol or drugs. That's why many recovery organizations are built on spirituality, but there is no religious requirements to participate in most recovery activities. More information about recovery support groups is available on page 90. Like I said, we'll go over that later. Also, too, my thought, I know, by all means, like I said, everybody handles things differently. But also, too, I believe your conditioning of your way of thinking, if you will, can also have a lot in maintaining your recovery and your healing process. And I say that because, just like I was saying about counting days, or having it in your mindset, I need to stay with this, or I'm not gonna get better. I need to do this, or I'm not gonna get better. And while that may be true on some people, and all due respect, but do you ever get? Maybe you're conditioning yourself unintentionally in believing that that's your only way. Because instead of going to support groups, you could do something else positive. Or I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to support groups. I'm just saying some people like to go to sport. Some people, I must say this with respect, some people are addicted to support groups. And I don't know if there's a support group for people that are addicted to support groups. It's kind of, I don't want to say humorous to think about, but in my warped train of thought, it kind of is. I'm going to have to Google that later. That might be a podcast. But conditioning yourself to believe certain ways of thinking that there's no other way. Like I said, to some people, maybe that is true. That they need the structure, they need this, and this. But if you got, okay, let's say you take out the support group. And instead of going to a support group, be a mentor to somebody. Like, volunteer with the Boys and Girls Club, or Big Brother, Big Sister program, or volunteer at a cancer hospital, or an addiction hospital, or, something of that nature. I know I used to work in this one this one hospital that handled addiction and recovery and suicide attempts and mental health. It was a mental health hospital. And I remember sitting in the orientation, and they were like, it said something about they don't discourage people with addiction to apply. They actually encourage it because that person understands on a level that is needed, I guess, per se, on what they're about. And if you are an employee, and let's say hypothetically you have to take a drug test and you fail, they would be able to work with you to offer you treatment, because if they can work with strangers that they don't even know per se, why wouldn't they want to work with their employees? Because they are there for a purpose to help, regardless if they're an employee or a client or a patient. So that was one of the things they talked about in orientation. So I applaud them on that, because that is the way it should be. And so that's something to think about. If you have an addiction and you are recovering, don't get discouraged. Instead of doing something hypothetically, I'm just going to pull up the support group. Try to apply for a mental hospital as being an employee or a volunteer, and take your positive reinforcement role in that direction. And in working in that environment, I actually personally myself, I know for a fact, I personally saved 2 people's lives. Literally saved their lives. One was a gentleman, I saved him from his roommate, who was in need of some strong intervention. And another one was a young female that actually, if I wouldn't have intervened her when I did, she probably would have not lasted the night. And that was because I wasn't even working on that side of the floor. I was on the male side, but it's adjacent to the female side, and I could hear her down the male hallway. And just based off of the way she was acting, I knew and understood what was happening, because I had witnessed it in some people that I knew. And in this particular hospital, and I know this is off subject, but it's not, they actually, I called it a medical jail, because they had the silver phones hanging on the wall and had the day room. You had asked if you can come out of your room, and you had to do the squat and cough and all that stuff, and go in the line to go get something to eat, and whatever. And but it had to have structure, obviously. But this particular night, it was a very, very big, we were slammed that night. It was around the holidays. And we had a woman on the woman's side, that had that hallway that night. And she wasn't normally from our floor. She was from over where the teenagers the teenagers that lived there on site, that lived in the facility. She was usually on that floor. But this particular night, she was helping out on the female side, and I was on the male side. And the woman that was having the issues was in one of the very first rooms up close to the nurse's station. And she was very, very loud. But what she was doing and saying and how she was acting is what got my attention. Because I saw and intervened and witnessed a lot of different things. I mean, you really do. But this particular night, it really got my attention. And even though I was doing the hallway of the male side, I made it a point to add her into my rotation of my checkpoints and whatnot on the male side. And I would go in there, and I actually built a rapport with her in a relationship. She actually called me mom a couple times. But when you come into the facility, you get checked out. You get searched, all that 9 yards. Then you come back to the back, and then you get searched again. You get strip searched. You do the squat and cough. You get checked over. Your stuff checked over, the whole 9 yards. And somehow, some way, she managed to get a ton of different types of drugs in there with her. She had like 5 Xanaxes, a bunch of meth, and some other stuff. She had put them in her private parts. She had swallowed some of them. She put some in her ear. She put some in her hair. She put some in places I don't even know how she got there. She was drinking the shampoo to make herself go to the bathroom. She was messed up, and it was scary. I was concerned for her. And I took the shampoo bottle away from her because she was drinking. I said, "Why are you drinking this?" And I took it from her. Well, then she went and got her roommates. And she was putting stuff, she was going through her roommate's stuff, and her roommate was trying so hard to go to sleep. And she did not like the woman who was sitting on that side of the floor watching that hall. She did not like her at all. She tried to go to that woman, and I guess the woman was rude to her, whatever she said. So she kind of clung to me a little bit and called me mom and whatnot. She hadn't eaten. But anyway, I was very, very concerned. And I said something to the nurse. And I said, she needs to be rechecked. Something is not going right. We need to take her room down. We need to search her room because she's drank 2 bottles of shampoo and she is off the hook right now. I mean, it is just not good. And so we took her back into the room when you're first brought in, and we strip searched her again. And she had drugs in her ears. She had drugs in her private spot. She had drugs in her hair. I mean, she was pulling out bags, and I asked her when she was in her room before I went and got the nurses, I'm like, what are you on? And she's like, I think she said she took like 5 Xanaxes or something, and she was trying to get them out of her by drinking the shampoo, and I don't think she understood how that worked. She was trying to get stuff out of her, and it was not going well for her. And so anyway, after we did that, I asked her, I said, you need to eat. So she agreed to let me get her something to eat. And so I went to the children's wing, because we also had a children's wing there, because they always kept food on hand, not just snacks. We always had snacks on hand. They actually kept food because it's residential. They live in the facility, and their kids. So I went down there to get her some food and stuff, and she ate a little bit of it. Well, at that time, then I decided, I'd be the one to go in there and I'd, do her room a once over. And I was searching her room, and the lady that was searching, she goes, were you like a correctional officer or a cop or something? I was like, no, why? She goes, you're looking in places I wouldn't even think to look. I was like, no, just nope, I just know how sometimes this goes. And she's like, I never would even thought to look there. And by the time I was done, I had a cup of baggies and different types of drugs and pills, and I put it in a cup, and I was like, how in the world did this all get in here? And I gave it to the head nurse or whatever, and she was going to dispose of it. And that woman's blood pressure dramatically dropped. And they called an ambulance, like, quick, fast, and in a hurry. And they got her out of there and took her to the hospital. And she ended up surviving, thank goodness. But it was bad. It was really bad. But it's scenarios like that, I guess, knowing that you might go through life thinking that you can save people or give up on people because you're like, I'm done, I'm exhausted, or, what difference can I possibly make? Who can I possibly, what could I possibly do? And there's all kinds of scenarios that play through people's minds. But just because you're healing from self-medicating or addiction or whatever you want to call it, doesn't mean that you can't be that one person at that one moment when it's needed. If even for yourself, but just like that woman and that other guy. I literally, his roommate was having severe problems, and he was fighting some demons really hard. And the older man who was sharing a room with him had just got back from the hospital because he had problems with his stomach. And so he was trying to rest, and he went to go to the bathroom. And I don't know exactly what his roommate did to him. I kept going in there and checking on him because just the way he was acting, I was concerned. And he took like 5 showers, but he was never wet. And I was 2 doors down from doing my checks, and I heard a big, loud noise. And I went down there, and his roommate, the older man, was laying on the floor, and his head was busted open. And he thought he was home. And I think he thought Clinton was still president. He didn't know what date it was. He couldn't remember his name. He was very disoriented. His head was bleeding severely, and his roommate was standing in the corner just, he was just like staring. And I went in there and I looked at him and I said, "You, right there, get in your bed and do not move." Do not move one bit. And I had crawled to the door because I was trying to keep this guy's head from bleeding more. And I crawled to the door a little bit, scooted, and hollered down the hallway for the nurses. And all due respect for nurses, I love you because you have a big thing on your, you do a lot of great things. But these nurses came running down the hallway with their their blood pressure machine. And I'm telling him, his head's busted open. And I understand they got to check his vitals and stuff. But I'm looking at him going, I'm telling you, his head's bleeding. Why didn't you bring something with you? Because then she's like, just sit with him and I'll be back. Okay. Why didn't you bring something with you? But, all due respect, I get it. I get it. But I sat down there with him and talked to him and spoke with him and tried to reassure him what the date was and this, that, and the other. And the ambulance got there, and he didn't remember anything. He thought Clinton was president. He thought he was at home. He had just moved in, the whole 9 yards. And his head was cut open, and they had to take him to the hospital. And it's just, unfortunately, knowing what I was, I guess, knowing the signs and symptoms, if you will, from past experiences of people that I knew, came into play very big those couple of times. But also, too, knowing at that one moment, I literally did make a difference in someone's life. And it wasn't just their own. I made a difference in their families who didn't have to bury their loved one. But also, too, it made a difference in mine. Because I knew that I made a difference. And I was able to, I don't know how to explain it. I was there for a reason. I had a purpose. And they always say that things that you go through in life, I believe everything happens for a reason. And sometimes we might not know what that reason is. But sometimes our biggest moments of our life, our biggest heartbreaks, our biggest triumphs and hurdles, if you will, sometimes are the biggest teaching moments that help us in an intervention when we least expect it in a positive way. So I guess the point of that is you can always take your one moment, however you choose to put it, whether it be in a group meeting, whether it be in positive reinforcement, whether it be in whatever it is, of healing your healing process. But in the midst of that healing process, a big part of your healing, I believe, is also helping to heal. If that makes sense. Kind of like every teacher is a better teacher when they're a student and vice versa. Sometimes healing, you heal the best when you're healing. Because while you're healing somebody else, you're teaching yourself the importance of why it's needed to heal. I guess if that's the way you want to look at it. Maybe I'm not wording it right, but I hope that makes sense. Let's see. 12-step programs. 12-step programs are based on the steps taken by the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous support groups to recover from alcoholism. Narcotics Anonymous groups follow identical steps. The programs emphasize a lack of control over the disease and the recognition of a higher power. Smart Recovery. Smart Recovery is a supportive program that focuses on ways individuals can improve themselves. It emphasizes self-empowerment and self-improvement, and meetings teach members to live healthy lives using a 4-point program. During recovery, you'll overcome problematic motivators, correct self-harming behaviors, and cope with dangerous situations. You'll rebuild relationships, and your physical and mental health will improve. But recovery is a process that takes time. When I was, I don't know if you've listened to my other podcasts and stuff, I've been on a very long journey of healing in a lot of ways. Self-harm, depression, anxiety, OCD, bipolar, PTSD, the list goes on. I'm a self-harm survivor. I'm a suicide, how do I put this? Suicidal victim survivor. That's how I like to word it. But I try to do outpatient at this mental health hospital, and I didn't really like the setup. It was a group setting, but we all sat at tables kind of shaped like a U. And we had to go around the room, and there was a lot of us, a lot of people in there. And every time we went in there, we had to repeat basically ourselves, who we were, why we were there. You got a couple of minutes to talk, and then they moved on. You really cannot elaborate too much. You really cannot get into the depth of it. And honestly, I got tired of explaining myself over and over again of who I was and why I was there. I already know who I am, and I already know why I'm there. Can we move on? And the people that are in here every day are the same people that were in here in the last meeting. So they know who I am and why I'm here. And I did this for a while, and I just felt I needed one-on-one. The group setting was just not for me. I did take out some excellent worksheets and stuff that they give out, which did help a lot. But I am now in one-on-one therapy, and if my psychiatrist, my therapist is listening to me right now, I will see you in a couple days. And thank you. He says I make his job easy. I said, well, then maybe I need to get paid and you need to sit here. He laughed, of course. But I'm still on the side I'm on, and we didn't switch places, so I don't. Anyway, so the stages of change. Most people spend a lot of time thinking about their alcohol or drug use and what their lives would be like without the substance before they decide to seek sobriety. When people make life-changing decisions, they go through different stages. Psychologist James Prochaska developed a theory that described the 5 stages of change. The first one is pre-contemplation. Everyone begins in the pre-contemplation stage, and some people never leave it. In this stage, people are unaware of the problems caused by their behavior, or they believe the benefits outweigh the harms. They aren't concerned with changing their behavior, and they have no intent on changing. Number 2, contemplation. The contemplation stage begins when a person starts to recognize the problems caused by their behavior. They're unsure if they're ready or if they want to make a change, but they think about what would happen if they did. They often lack the confidence to change. Preparation. After a person decides to make a change, they begin to accept responsibility for their behaviors. They develop strategies and ways to make things happen. Their confidence and faith that change can occur grows. That they can change, it grows. Number 4, action. During the action stage, a person begins behaving differently. They learn new ways to live and develop new skills. They make intentional decisions to act differently and avoid old behavior. The person builds momentum and enthusiasm for change. Number 5, maintenance. In the final stage, a person has changed their behavior and can avoid old behaviors with minimal effort. They've learned new behaviors and have control over their thoughts and actions. The person is aware of high-risk situations and actively avoids them. At any point during the stages of change, a person can lose momentum or change their mind. A lapse in the process or a relapse backwards can be caused by social pressure, exposure to trauma, or other negative influences. Lapses or relapse are temporary setbacks that can be overcome. Stages of recovery. The stages of change can be applied to any behavior change. Understanding how a person changes behavior can help individuals who are seeking sobriety understand challenges and build motivation. The process of recovery from addiction also involves 5 stages. These stages can often overlap with the stages of change. The stages of recovery are characterized by the challenges and vulnerabilities the person in recovery is likely to experience. Number 1, stabilization. During the stabilization period, people experience withdrawal and cravings, and they are extremely vulnerable to triggers. They often lack a supportive environment and the necessary skills for coping with the stress and other triggers. And I'm going to add this on there. And if you obviously are in an addiction or recovering or whatever, can relate, I'm just going to speculate, in all due respect, that sometimes a trigger for someone going through and battling their healing process of addiction or whatnot could be someone that is constantly, unintentionally, let me put it this way, and lovingly, with respect, hound someone on getting sober. And that is also something that could be triggering them. I'm not saying that's true, but it's a stress Because then if they don't succeed or they fail, then they're going to be harder on themselves, and they're going to look at themselves more as a failure, because they want so much to be able to not be a disappointment, I guess, if you will, to anyone, that it actually causes more harm to them when they can't accomplish the expectations of the person that is trying to help them. If that's understandable. Just my thought. Let's see. Number 2, early. During early recovery, people have recovered from their physical dependency on alcohol and other drugs, but they're very vulnerable to friends or peers who use substance of abuse. They understand that they must develop new skills, but don't know how to use them. Number 3, middle. In the middle recovery period, I'm going to learn how to say this sentence. In the middle recovery period, people are living a healthy lifestyle. They've practiced the skills they've learned during early recovery. The biggest challenge during this period is repairing damaged relationships and learning vocational skills. Their primary vulnerability is to practical problems such as unemployment and inadequate living situations. That might also be a trigger for them, because then they feel inadequate, they feel useless, they feel like they can't support their family or themselves. They feel codependent. They feel like a failure. Their self-esteem is about the size of a half of a peanut. It could be a variety of different things, and that there can also trigger them. Or if, say, and I'm just going to use this as an example. I know it doesn't limit it to this, but say if they've been incarcerated. And obviously they're clean because they've been incarcerated. Well, let me rephrase that. They're supposed to be clean because they're incarcerated. And I laugh because that's really sad to say it like that. But let's hypothetically say they're incarcerated and they come out and they're clean. Let's say hypothetically they're a felon. And I have said this in many of my podcasts in the past. I am not a felon, but I'm very outspoken for the felony family. And I'm going to word it that way. Because I feel like and I'm going to say this, society gives them a life sentence for charges they know nothing about. They don't even know this person. They don't even know anything about them. They probably don't even know that they even exist in the world until they come on their doorstep needing to try to rebuild their life. They paid for their crime. They did their time, but they get out and now they have a life sentence to society that is going to dictate their livelihood of them supposed to be rehabilitated and starting over in life. And instead, they might as well just stay locked up. Because that's exactly where the world makes them feel like. They're locked up. They're locked up in a world outside of the walls that they've been condemned in. And now they're locked up in their mind. And they have to find a way to survive. And I'm not saying all of them do this, but sometimes they go back to what they know. And they go back to trying to cope. They go back to self-medicating. And some of them don't even make it that far. There needs to be a lot of changes in this world. A lot. But when you have limitations that are additional to the unnecessarity of things that do not need to be placed on them, That's just wrong. You're there. I'm going to say this with respect. Basically, you're setting them up for failure because you are not letting them have they did their time. They come out. That should be, they're out. And that's the way it should be. They should be able to have availability to start their freaking lives over. Who are you to condemn them and restrict them from rebuilding their life? When they are in jail and prison, they are there to be rehabilitated. All to get out, being excited, have their life back, have all this motivation and these big plans of action of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to get my family, I'm going to marry my dude, I'm going to marry my wife, I'm going to see my kids, I'm going to go to this, that, and the other, I'm going to get me a job, I'm going to buy me a house, I'm going to save up, whatever the case may be. Then they walk out them doors and out that gate. Hello, society. You condemn me again. And you know, another thing, and I'm going to get off subject, but I'm not, because this really all kind of, it all goes together. Because this is life. A lot of those felons that walk out them gates and them doors used to be the very same people that served this country to defend that very society that condemns them for walking out them doors and out them gates. Maybe they have PTSD or something that they went through. And maybe their drug of choice, their DOC, if you will, drug of choice, now happens to be a number. Because they had no other way to cope. At least they thought. But now they're going to get out. And the very some people that were on the lines to defend you and your country and you to have your freedom of speech now have to live in the shadow of survival of a totally different war that they never deserved to be in the first place. Because not every war that needs to be fought needs to even be a war at all. And the only thing that they need to be fighting for is fighting to hold back their stomachs from hurting so much because they're laughing so hard enjoying life. But they can't do that now because you know what? Society says, hey, we believe in equal employment opportunities, but we're going to have a little disclosure down here at the bottom. Are you a felon? Have you been convicted of misdemeanor or whatever? And please explain your answer. Because we're just nosy and we want to know. But we really don't care because we're not going to hire you. But then you do have a few people, bless your hearts, that do believe in giving people second chances. And that society is the ones that need to be more of. Because you all are one moment, one thing, one incident, one something in your life that will make you know better with your pinky up in the air than the person that you're trying to belittle, pass judgment on, and condemned, and you don't even know who they are. And you don't even know what zip code they live in. You don't know anything about them. You just know that they are a statistic in the census of the senseless society of this world. And that's a lot to say. All due respect. Number 4. Late. During late recovery, people learn from mistakes they made during the initial recovery stages. They've developed goals and robust supportive system. They've corrected self-destruction behaviors and learned to cope with everyday stressors. The main vulnerability during the late period stems from inadequate time spent addressing underlying causes of addiction, such as trauma. Number 5, maintenance. Most people live the rest of their lives in the maintenance stage of recovery. They cope with transition, stress, and relationship problems. They actively avoid relapse. But they are vulnerable to relapse if they are involved in a traumatic event or if they overestimate their ability to avoid relapse. Some people breeze through early stages of recovery, and others get stuck. Some people struggle to develop the skill or supportive systems necessary to transition through the stages quickly. They require professional treatment, professional training, and some kind of formal assistance. Your recovery journey and path to sobriety may be different from a friend or family member. A relative may benefit from a 12-step program, but you might feel comfortable with a different type of recovery support group. You'll need to learn the coping strategies, stress relief techniques, and recovery skills that work for you. Relapse. Like other chronic diseases, addiction often involves relapse. People fighting the disease of addiction relapse at rates similar to those of people fighting other chronic diseases, such as diabetes, hypertension, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse. The American Society of Addiction Medicines defines relapse as the following: a process in which an individual who has established abstinence or sobriety experience reoccurrence of signs and symptoms of active addiction, often including resumption of the pathological pursuit of reward and or relief through the use of substance or other behaviors. Relapse can be triggered by exposure to addictive substance, risky behavior, trauma, or other high-stress situations. The symptoms that precede relapse may be noticeable. People who are about to relapse usually disengage from recovery activities or isolate themselves from people who support them. Early intervention and re-engagement in recovery activities can prevent relapse from occurring or lessen the severity of relapse if it has already occurred. Now I'm going to stop there because, for one, we're at an hour 52. But the next session we're going to go on, it's on page 20, starts with the worksheets and stuff with questions and things. So I think this is a pretty good ending point. So again, like I was saying, addiction is not just defined as drugs and alcohol. But whatever the case may be, kind of like with the world of the cell phone, if there's not an app for it, there's a support group for it. And if there's not, doesn't mean you can't make one and create one. Because you might be that one moment and motivator that does something different than what anybody else has done. That might be the very, very thing that was needed from somebody else that has tried every other option and is losing hope. And it is that complicated to be that complicated. But yet so simple to some. And I'm going to say, if you are going through something, 988 is Suicide Prevention Hotline. Try to have a game plan if possible, because I know sometimes when you're not in the right frame of mind, you can't make rational decisions. So try to learn different mechanisms on calming yourself, redirecting yourself if possible. If it's possible and you have supportive friends or family, please reach out to them. If you're like some people that don't have that option, or if you are a silent recovering self-medicator, I was trying to think of what the word was, know that there are resources and options out there, but also too, also remember that you are one as well. And don't think that you're any less than something special, and don't believe that you're anything less than a blessing, because you are. And I pray for each and every one of you, and I hope that you continue in with the rest of this as I go through this. I'll probably take a few podcasts because there is a lot of information in this ebook. But like I said, feel free to go on drugrehab.com and pull up the Sobriety ebook. Don't wait on me. If you're in the motivation for it, get her done. And if you have anything to share or any stories, please feel free to reach out to me. Or if all possible, create your own podcast and be the mentor and the voice on the other end of somebody else's ear. It might just be exactly what they need. And like I say in every podcast and every ending, thank you for your time. It is the one thing in your life that you cannot get back. And it is priceless and very valuable. And if you have taken the time out of your life to share it with me, I wholeheartedly thank you. And I am very blessed to have you a part of my life. And with that, I'm going to end from here. And I hope that regardless of whatever end you feel like you are on, just remember that every ending can have a beautiful new beginning. And you deserve every single bit of that and more. And on that, I will leave you now. And I hope you can join me in my next one, as well as all my other ones. So before I start rambling and not making sense, I'm going to close out for now. Thank you all for joining me, and have a safe, blessed, and healing night.